Well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome in. My name's Chris Kieran. I work for Associated Industries of Massachusetts. I'm joined today by my colleague, Celia Grant, and we're glad you joined us today for what is the first of a four-part series that we're calling the Digital Transformation. My role this morning is to actually go over a few housekeeping details very quickly and then hand you over to the experts. Our intent in this entire series is to look at technology and look at it in a very practical manner and kind of get beyond the gee whiz, isn't that neat portion of technology to really look at how technology can help your business. And so today's session is leveraging technology to better your business. So the housekeeping details very quickly. First of all of you are muted. That's not because we don't like you. It's simply because it creates a better listening experience for everyone on the call. If you have questions during the webinar, which you probably will, the best way to ask that question is to use the text box that's in the control area on the right-hand side of your screen. If you simply text your question, one of us will relate it to Jeff, Chandler, and Cindy, and we'll make sure that your question is answered. Our experts will stay around until all of the questions are answered. I'm also going to anticipate one question at the outset, which is, yes, we will send the presentation slide deck in PDF format out to all the participants on this webinar sometime later on in the day or first thing tomorrow, so you'll be able to have that and to share it. We're also recording this webinar, so you'll be able to listen again or share the recording with other folks in your company as you wish. So with that brief introduction, I'm very happy to turn the program over to Jeff Lauria. Jeff is Vice President of Technology at iCorps Technologies. Jeff?
Thank you very much. Thank you for that introduction, Chris. And thank you for joining today. Today there are three people that will be participating on our side. We have myself, as Chris indicated, Jeff Lauria. I'm the Vice President of Technologies at iCorps. iCorps is a local MSP servicing the Northeast. We have Chandler Stevens, which is our Vice President of Cloud. His focus is helping companies move and migrate and transform into the cloud and leverage those services. And with me today is also Cindy Lyman, who is the Vice President of Finance here at Associated Industries of Massachusetts. We believe to kick off this series, who best to talk to is folks here at AIM. Over the next few screens, we're going to discuss really what is the digital transformation. We hear a lot about digital transformation. We hear that word, but really what does it mean and what is driving that shift? First and foremost, technology. Technology is rapidly changing. And when we transform from a legacy system or an on-premise system into, we'll call it the cloud, we can participate with the benefits and take advantage of the benefits of innovation, where in the past, if you had a legacy service, for example, sitting on-prem, you'd have to wait for an upgrade. So about the technology innovations, and those are not just limited to end user functionality, but also enhanced security and other services. The landscape is changing as well. Most businesses today are connected to the internet, and they are faced with lots of challenges. One of the biggest challenges really is the cyber landscape, cybercrime, ransomware, all of those pieces. And moving to a cloud or moving and transforming a business will help really protect your organization against those threats. The workforce is shifting as well. We have more and more folks that are mobile. They want to consume information anytime, anywhere. And being able to provide that information to them in a timely fashion, in a secure manner, is very, very important. These are some of the things that are driving the transformation. And really, to do that, You need to focus on a good IT partner, a good cloud broker, someone who's going to help to get you from your current infrastructure, your current legacy systems, up into a cloud and services. Some of the top reasons for really driving this digital transformation, and it really is transforming your business and modernizing your technology, right? Improved efficiency and cutting costs. You know, one of the challenges with today's IT infrastructure is that every time you want to bring on a new service or every time you need to deploy a new server, there is a cost associated with it that really is not scalable. A lot of times those are surprises. You know, oh, we need to deploy a new CRM. Oh, we need licensing. We need hardware costs. So using services can be more efficient. Additionally, all of these services can work together to increase collaboration across the workforce, meaning that everyone has the same access to the information at the same time, that the systems all work together versus being separate. Accelerate innovation, that's the other part. As cloud services develop, as they mature, that service is available to you instantly. You don't have to wait for an upgrade. So, for example, you know, we have folks using Server 2012, and Server 2016 is out. Literally, you had to wait 4 years to do that upgrade. Or, more relevant, Windows 7 to Windows 8 to Windows 10, you actually have to wait. Well, with cloud-based services, those services are available as soon as they are published. Modernization of IT infrastructure. Again, you know, we're taking the hardware, we're taking that legacy component out of your data centers, we're putting it in the cloud, infrastructure as a service, software as a service. So that shift in responsibility is moving. That allows you to be flexible, dynamic, as you can grow and change as needed. It also, there's an increased level of security. You know, one of the big problems with legacy systems and one of the big benefits of cloud services is scalable as needed. You pay for what you use. So an example would be someone who has a collaboration system installed on-prem had to buy a server, had to buy a bunch of licenses. You bought licenses based on how many users you had at that point in time. If you had 100 users, you buy 100 licenses. If you were to drop to 35 users or 50 users or even 60 users, you still own those 100 licenses. They do not scale down. So here you have the ability to scale up and scale down and to change rapidly. Becoming a leader. You know, this is one of these things where since technology is rapidly moving and rapidly evolving, there are services and functions that you can take advantage of to help move business forward versus being stuck on a legacy system or waiting for an upgrade to appear. Predictable spend. One of the challenges I hear a lot from organizations is with traditional IT, you know, midstream, mid-year, IT will come to accounting and say, you know, we need a new server for this project. We haven't accounted for that. Or, you know, we need to buy some warranties. Or here's a licensing expense. Utilizing cloud services, we know what the cost is per employee per year. So when you onboard a new employee, you know that the technology cost associated with that onboarding is going to be X. And it is very predictable. And lastly, dynamic and scalable. You know, as I said before, the ability to scale to your business literally by a click of a button is phenomenal. So there are no barriers to move your business forward when it comes to IT. You know, how is this relevant to your organization? You know, one of the things that we also see is a lot of times folks don't look past what's in front of them. They're not looking 6 months, 12 months, 36 months, and beyond. Utilizing cloud services really helps you realize that you don't have to have that 36-month vision in regards to what IT is doing, because on demand, you can scale up. Challenges you're looking to overcome. You know, one of the challenges is how you keep your systems current, how you keep everyone on the same page, same version of software, use the same user experience. So those are some of the challenges that a lot of companies are seeing. When you look at the digital transformation, what do you want to get out of it? Yeah, are you looking for efficiency, security, scalability, productivity, your return on investment, flexibility, the ability to be agile, innovation, mobility? All of those are outcomes by moving and modernizing your current infrastructure. Efficiency, scalability, mobility, productivity, all that happens. Enhanced security as well. So I'm going to switch to this screen here. Cindy is the Vice President of Finance at Associated Industries, and we engaged with them about 3 years ago to help them with their digital transformation. And I thought it'd be very helpful to actually talk to someone who went through this process and what came out and how they found the process. So Cindy, let me introduce Cindy. And what I'm going to do is ask her a bunch of questions about her transformation, and we'll go from there. Good morning.
Good morning. So good afternoon, everyone.
So you started 3 years ago. What was one of the biggest drivers to get you to digital transformation, to the cloud?
Our biggest issue at that time was staying up to date. That I had joined AIM a couple of years earlier. We had, we had some older servers, we had some outdated software, and we wanted to be on the cutting edge of technology. We wanted to be sort of we wanted to meet our business needs with the technology that was available to us. And by using the legacy system, it was difficult to do that. So we did look at the cloud, and we wanted to stay up to date. That was the biggest issue. We also wanted to manage costs. You all know AIM. We have about 50 employees, and how are we to manage costs today and going forward? And as Jeff indicated earlier, acquiring a server and not being able to scale. When did we purchase that server? Being sort of ready for that, having it budgeted, it was an issue for us. So now we're able to manage costs. We understand exactly what our cost is per employee.
So when you started this transformation, I know you started with email. I think that was the first thing that we did was email. How was that process? When you started, were roadblocks? How was the process?
Easy and hard at the same time. So when I think about it, our first step to this process was to move our email systems, and that's moving the old traditional style of email and Office products that we all knew, Outlook, Word, Excel, moving it from the licenses to Office 365. And Office 365, if you don't know, is a product based in the cloud that provides Outlook, Excel, Word, SharePoint, which is a file sharing platform. And we thought that, well, everybody knows Outlook, everybody knows Word and Excel. This is going to be an easy transition. It wasn't as easy as we thought because there still was a learning curve. We still had to assess sort of the competencies of our staff. How much did they know about Excel? How much did they know about Word and Outlook? Because when we moved to this platform, sort of we had this idea that we were going to use it better. And because everybody had a different sort of level of experience and training, by moving to this platform that was consistent throughout the organization, and some people, adapted to it really easily, and some people sort of had a difficult time with it.
Yeah, if I recall, one of the things is one of the when we moved, or when they moved to the same platform, we wanted to standardize. So everyone worked in the same manner, data was stored in the same manner. And that was one of the challenges there, was to get everyone to actually use the platform consistently and across. When you moved over with email, then you went over to SharePoint, correct? That was the next piece, was to move your file server. So now you've got rid of your email server. Email's working in the cloud. People are using that same familiar tool set, Outlook. Now we moved from your file system, from your traditional file server, over to SharePoint. And, how was that overall experience when you started and where it is today?
Well, it took a little while for people to get accustomed to the new file server, being able to sort of access their files. But once we were over the learning curve, it's now fantastic. Now it's just fantastic. And one of the things that is great about it is that we now have access to our files from anywhere, anytime, any day. And the access to the files the experience is identical, whether I'm sitting in my office here at AIM, whether I'm home, whether I'm at my grandmother's house and I have to get on her computer to access an email. The experience is the same and it's consistent, and that's been really helpful. Before we moved to Office 365 in the Microsoft Cloud, we used Citrix as our device to access our on-premise server, should we be out of the office and wanting to sort of work remotely. Well, it worked sometimes. It worked differently for different folks based on the equipment that they had. And if, for whatever reason, there was downtime at the server in the office on a Saturday afternoon, well, you were out of luck. You couldn't get at the information because there was something going on premise in the Boston office. So the real significant difference for us and for me in particular is that it's this consistent experience with whatever device you might be on, wherever you might be.
So I know one of the challenges when we first came to AIM was that you had half your employees in the field. So getting them information, getting them either to log on to Citrix, to have them actually get email in a timely fashion, the ability to actually share documents. So that's all been addressed by moving to SharePoint and Outlook. One of the things that I noticed that AIM does very well is they've embraced the platform. So they've embraced email, you've embraced SharePoint and OneDrive, and I'll talk about OneDrive in a moment. You use Skype a lot here. Skype is part of the Office 365 productivity suite, and of all the clients that iCorps deals with, you really have embraced Skype across the organization. Can you kind of talk about that for a little?
Well, I love Skype, and for those of you who don't know what it is, it's really audio video component of Office 365. It's at a click of a button. Well, first of all, let's back up. First of all, if somebody is available to you, you can see right on your screen, the person's got a little green bar. Oh, great, they're in front of their computer. Again, no matter where they are, so I can grab them, I can click on them, I can have a audio video experience to have a conversation. It has really replaced telephone calls within our organization. And that really is my go-to now if I want to speak to somebody, my colleagues here at AIM, and there are others in the organization. That's a go-to. I hardly pick up the telephone when I speak to those in the organization. And not only is it a telephone experience, we can share our screen. So if I'm working on something, I want to show it to someone, I say, let me share my screen. We have a conversation. I can turn the document over to the person I'm talking with. They might make a change. They might move some things around, and it's this real collaborative opportunity. I mean, this whole idea of, I'm going to send you an email, I'm going to attach this document to an email, open it up, they make a change, they have to send it back to me. That has really gone away. And so the Skype experience, Jeff, I'm glad you brought that up. I don't even think about it anymore because this is what we do. That has made a huge difference in how we do our business every day. I envision that we will use Skype more in the future, not just for internal meetings, but those of you that know AIM, we have many policy committees that our members are members of, and we're looking in 2018 to use that Skype experience for these committee meetings instead of a conference call. I think we all have had the conference call experience that we're staring at this device in the middle of the table and you can't really hear and you can't really sort of experience the meeting in the same way as if you were sitting in the room. Skype changes that. And so we envision using it more and more for external meetings.
Do you believe that Skype has brought kind of your organization together? Meaning that, when you have folks in the field, you have people who work remote, it really gives, in a lot of companies, it gives that disconnected feel. Is Skype one of those things that has kind of reorganized the organization almost by bringing them in?
Yes. And although we don't require that we use the video experience of Skype, I think we might start to request that of staff, because that's the better experience. When you see somebody, when you see their expression, when you see them, that, Mary Jo hasn't, she didn't put up her makeup on this morning. It enhances the experience.
So we've talked a little about the email experience. We've talked about SharePoint, and we've now removed an email server from on-prem. We've talked a little bit about file server. We've now removed that file server that's on-prem. We've now removed the Citrix server that's on-prem. We talked a little bit about Skype. There are two other things that I'd like to talk about, and then I'm going to bring Chandler in to talk a little bit more about kind of the overall cloud experience. But one of the things is OneDrive. OneDrive, for those folks that are not familiar with OneDrive, really is designed for personal storage, right? So we have SharePoint that is this central repository for collaboration on documents. But we have OneDrive that is used really for that personal storage. How is that working out? Because I do have a little story about it with some clients, but how is that working out?
I had no issue with OneDrive. OneDrive is fantastic. It's that consistent experience, no matter where you are, no matter what device you're using. I could, and I have done this, I could be in my car, not driving, of course, having to make a quick change in a document, say a Word document. I can get onto my OneDrive file system from my telephone, grab that document, make a quick change, either put it back in the OneDrive, or I can share it with someone and say, here it is, I made the change. And the experience is consistent. It looks the same, it feels the same. I know where the file is, and that's been a great help. And I think, if I could speak for the rest of the organization, I think that was the one area that was the easiest. This idea that here's your files. It really is structured. It looks and feels the same as if it was on your desktop or on a shared server. And the other benefit of all of this too, Jeff, I'm not sure we'll get to that, but is the backup of all of this data. So now everything is residing in the cloud. I'm not worried about backup. Is somebody backing up? Is something on somebody's desktop that it shouldn't be? It just really, we have it structured and set up that everything is residing in the cloud, and I don't worry that information is going to get lost.
Right. So we've now, as I said, going through here, we've taken Exchange away, we've taken away Citrix and the file server. What is near and dear to Associated Industries is their membership system. And they also transformed their membership system from an on-prem to cloud. That system has gone into Azure. It's actually gone into the cloud. I'm sorry, I forgot about Great Plains, but it's gone in the cloud. And how's that experience been? Right? So here is we've moved stuff to the Office 365. We've moved stuff to Azure, but we've also moved your membership system to almost a third-party SaaS provider, and where they all kind of work together. How's that experience been?
Again, very positive. When we started this idea of being in the cloud, being completely in the cloud environment, we did assess what systems did we have, what systems were we using, and we needed to update them all. And this is a really good example of when you have legacy systems and systems on premise and you buy them and they sit there and they get outdated and get old, and it's really difficult to make that decision to upgrade them. So we had an old membership database system, over 20 years old, I believe. I mean, it was working, it was functioning, it was a little clunky, but it was doing what we needed to do, but it wasn't integrated with the other things we were doing. So the decision included not only moving to Office 365, but to move into Microsoft CRM for our membership system. And we located a third-party provider that's been in the membership business for over 30 years. And they had built a membership database system on top of Microsoft CRM. So it was a logical decision. So now we have our membership database system that is fully integrated with Outlook, Word, Excel. We can download some data. We can do an advanced find. We can sort of get it into an Excel worksheet. We can email somebody from the database system. We could put an email from the email system into the database system. So all designed to serve our members better, which, as you know, if you're a member, that's what we do. That's our business. So we now have our entire technology systems in the cloud. The last one to complete it was Great Plains, and Great Plains is our financial systems, financial statements, payables, receivables, that kind of thing. And we moved Great Plains from on-premise to the cloud. So there really is nothing in this building. In preparing for this session, I said, well, what are some of the outcomes that I didn't really think about till after we started doing this, is that we now have a disaster recovery program. And that disaster recovery program is that Microsoft has 10, 12 data centers. If something were to happen to this building, if something, it would be weather of some sort. I'm not worried about that because we could set ourselves up at home, set ourselves up in an office, in a hotel somewhere, and do our work, because all of our systems, all of our data sort of resides outside of a single building. As I said earlier, the backups were important. Don't worry about them so much. And the third thing was security. So although we do have, we have our own, we have firewalls and we have spam protection and all of that, residing in the Microsoft cloud is an additional level of security that we would not have if we had the data on-premise.
So one of the benefits, and I brought up another screen here, was kind of the digital transformation goals for AIM. And I think any company that is looking to transform to modernize their infrastructure really should set some goals. This is going to be how you measure your success, right? So here with AIM, respond quickly to membership needs. by moving their membership system into the cloud, by moving their legacy systems into the cloud, their availability really has gone up, right, to the 5 nines. So they're not necessarily worried about the power being shut down here for the weekend because they have to test, or there is an internet outage here that prevents them to actually service their members. So I think that's one piece there. As we were talking, the other goal for them was the ability to make sure that software and services are always updated. AIM leverages the Office suite exclusively, and to make sure that every user has the same version, that has the same update, that has the same improvements. And actually, I'm gonna ask you this question: over the last 2 years, the platform has changed. There's been lots of things added to the platform. Is it a positive? Have you seen positive ads, or are there negatives? I mean, when we started 2.5 years ago, 3 years ago, for example, you did not have the ability to attach a Word document, and this was one of the challenges. You did not have the ability easily to attach a OneDrive document into Outlook, but that's been fixed. So, I mean, have you seen those positives,
Yeah, I don't get many questions or comments anymore from staff about, I can't do this, how do I do this? And I think it's a combination of improvements made. I mean, we were on sort of the front end when Office 365 sort of came out. So we were kind of on the front end of that. So it's both, there's been improvements that just happened, as well as people are now more comfortable and they've been trained and they sort of understand the system. But there have been many times that there was something that, gee, I would be thinking, gee, I wish it did X, Y, Z, and then I would come in the next day and there it was. Because that's part of what is happening here. I mean, Microsoft is just constantly making improvements. I just got something on my Outlook the other day, analytics.
Yes.
Analytics just appeared, and what analytics is doing, I think.
When you look at it, it's kind of scary where you're spending all your time.
Yeah, that is going to be telling me what I'm doing with my email and how I'm spending my time, and it's just really interesting.
Actually, that's a very good point. I'm going to actually turn this over to Chandler, who can elaborate a little bit more on kind of those innovations that have happened over the course of the last 24 months. There's been approximately a couple of hundred innovations, and Cindy made reference to analytics. So I'm going to turn this over to you, and maybe we could talk about kind of, where they're going and some of these features and how organizations can leverage what's in that Office 365 stack.
Absolutely. Thanks, Jeff. Sorry. Thank you, Cindy. So really, it's been interesting to watch Microsoft since first releasing Office 365 3 or 4 years ago, to watch the constant pace of both innovation as well as just adoption in the market. For Microsoft, it's all about really, getting those workloads, that email, the collaboration, into the platform, but then really expanding beyond that. And so, Cindy, you mentioned, the ability to at one point not be able to attach documents, but now more about collaborating on one single instance of the document, having everybody see the same changes. Those types of things are enabled through both the OneDrive for Business as well as SharePoint Online. And I would imagine there are times when you have several people in your staff or several people in your team want to maybe work on a document and really want to work on it together, or maybe work on it in a way where you can see changes being made in real time. So those are all capabilities that are built into the platform today. Prior to Office 365, if you tried to do that, you might run into problems of people overriding someone else's changes or stepping on each other, that type of thing. So Office 365 has really focused on, taking that away and really making it a true collaborative environment. And I'm assuming you probably have seen.
Yeah, we've experienced that in a significant way.
Absolutely. The other thing what's interesting about Office 365 is that recently, and I say recently, probably in the last 2 years, they've really focused on building out what I call the analytics of the user experience. They've really focused on bringing in, bringing to bear the information around how work styles are being applied in the organization. So you mentioned analytics, Outlook Analytics, which is a feature of Outlook. It's actually built in Office 365, but it's a feature where you can actually get a kind of a synopsis of your work style. It will kind of give you a sense of, hey, you're spending a lot of time meeting with this person. Hey, you're spending time focused on email, or you're multitasking during meetings and that type of thing. So you get some insights into sort of the work behavior of yourself, and it does kind of make you take pause and understand, okay, I could maybe be working better if I maybe simplify my calendar. For example, it will demonstrate to you, hey, you're spending most of your time with this person. How about you divide and conquer? Maybe split the meetings with that person. That way you're not tied up as much on the calendar, as an example. So that's part of what's called the Delve analytics. And Delve is a way to really kind of look at what's happening across the entire organization within Office 365. You mentioned using SharePoint Online. One of the advantages of SharePoint Online is that the Office 365 system really looks carefully at everything that's going on and really builds a profile, and helps it helps basically users to kind of find out what people are working on. So one of the things I used to do, or I do today, is if I'm going to meet someone for the first time, I will actually type in their name into the Delve application in Office 365, and I'm presented with a series of documents and things that I can see. So not every document is available because there are permissions involved here. So I can see exactly what they've been working on, the types of things that may have interest them in the business, and I get a little bit more of a profile prior to going in and meeting the person for the first time. So that's just one example. Beyond the analytics, there are capabilities that talk to Power BI. So business intelligence obviously is one of those areas that is critical for an organization as they're trying to understand maybe cutting costs or driving revenue, that type of thing. So Power BI is a capability in Office 365 that brings those things together. So that's another area of innovation where Microsoft has really been working hard to build out capabilities with third parties. For example, if you have Salesforce CRM, you can actually leverage Power BI to build a view around those Salesforce information. So I know you use Dynamics.
Yeah.
And so Dynamics is one of those areas where you have the ability to kind of look at some interesting analytics and get more insights into what's going on within the Dynamics side of your business.
And is that, and when we talk about Office 365, I kind of look at it as kind of that hub, like everyone can go there and go out. So when we talk about Power BI, and you talk a little bit about, Salesforce and things of that nature, or Dynamics, I'm getting a view of information. Can I get deeper information? Can I drill down through that?
Absolutely. So there are ways that you can do that. From a Power BI perspective, it's really a gateway. It's a gateway to data. And the nice thing about the platform is you mentioned Excel. So I would imagine most of our listeners today are hopefully somewhat familiar with Excel. You can actually pull the data directly into Excel from Power BI and begin working on it with that tool. So it's not necessarily about having to learn a new set of tools. It's more about understanding how to bring the data in and then making it available to tools that most everyone understands and can leverage in Excel, as an example. Being able to drill through that information is critical as well, and that is something that the Power BI platform has done a really nice job of. The ability to have information that's aggregated and summarized in a way, but then be able to kind of go layer over layer and drill a little bit deeper into the platform.
So Power BI, for everyone here, so it's Power Business Intelligence.
Yes.
It really is to kind of take that information, aggregate it, and look at what's happening, like trends. So
Yes,
for example, how's our sales team doing over the course of 6 months, or whatever the case may be.
Absolutely.
Excellent.
Absolutely.
I also noticed that within the Office 365, so we have that traditional collaboration. If you think about it, there's messaging and SharePoint and OneDrive and OneNote and so forth. But we also brought in the Power BI aspect. We've also, I noticed that recently there's Flow, Microsoft Flow.
Yes.
And it's inside Office 365, which is interesting in itself because, again, you have these things that seem to be a little disconnected. But how can Flow help a business, and Flow help a business kind of succeed? How would they leverage that?
So Office 365 Flow is effectively the workflow engine within the platform itself. Flow provides the ability to connect two different business processes that may span two completely different technologies and be able to provide an integration where a trigger or an event occurs in, say, one system can be processed and responded to in another system. So Flow is really the glue that pulls those two processes together. And so, for example, Microsoft has actually been investing quite a bit in the Flow technology in working with third-party providers. I mentioned Salesforce earlier, Dropbox, others. There are these connectors that allow you to respond to events that are fired within these third-party SaaS-based or software-as-a-service-based solutions. Flow also has the ability to respond to the individual user events as well. So, for example, I have a Flow on my personal Outlook that notifies me whenever I get an email from my manager. It gives me a little trigger and just lets me know that my manager has sent me an email. So that's just one example. There are triggers that can be set up across all of the platform components in Office 365. So, for example, with SharePoint, if you wanted to build a flow that notified you when a new document has been posted to a SharePoint site, Flow will handle that for you. It can also take elements of that document and allow you to either put them into other systems or provide you a summary email. So there's a lot of ways that you can take the information that's being brought into Office 365. Flow has access to that and can respond accordingly.
That is great. So it's a platform that's continually developing.
Yes.
As we said, over the last 24 months, there's been a couple hundred additional features that just show up. Going down kind of our digital transformation goals here for Associated Industries, we talked about the membership, we talked about always being current in services, and Chandler talked a little bit more about some of those services. And during part 2 of this series, we'll talk about how those actually get implemented with productivity. So we're going to come back to that. We talked a little about the mobile workforce, accessible to access to data anytime. So that's met some of their goals as well. Again, a consistent experience for all the employees, reduce footprint. So when we started this webinar, we talked about what Associated Industries had in their data center, what their footprint was. Like most companies, they had some collaboration server. In this case, it was Exchange. They had a file server. They had a SQL server that was there for the membership services. They had a membership service. They had a utility server. They had a backup server. So they had really a traditional server environment. And again, 36 months ago. Today, there is nothing on site, as Cindy said, there is nothing on site that is, there is no hardware on site. Other than a firewall, some switches, some of that stuff to run infrastructure to give people access to the internet, obviously phone systems, but no traditional servers on site. So here's an organization that literally has reduced their footprint. The footprint is gone, which is fantastic. So that's really a credit to the organization.
But let me say something about that.
Uh-oh.
So if there was one thing that I was really nervous about, I knew this was a good idea, and obviously it wasn't just me in this organization. There was a team of people that we knew this was a good idea. We loved the idea of the collaboration. We loved the idea that we would be always up to date. We would receive new technologies as they come in from Microsoft. So Microsoft is literally telling us, okay, it's time. Flow's the example. Look at this great thing now. We didn't necessarily have to think about it and find the software and buy it and install it. There it is. And some of them apply, some of them don't apply to what we do. But the one area, and you all might be thinking this, that worried me was that we would be in the cloud. We couldn't touch the server. We couldn't feel it. It was ours. What would happen if something happened to the cloud? Well, I think what I've come to learn is that the likelihood would be greater that something would happen to our servers and our backup system. We had our original backup system, again, going back a number of years now, which you all probably had, was a tape backup system. So I think, so the conclusion I've come in the past few years is that the likelihood of something happening to the on-premise environment is greater than out in the cloud. And as the time has gone by and we continue to use it, and there's fewer and fewer help desk calls around it, and it's just working. It's kind of like how we feel about electricity. It just works. It's a worry that has gone away.
Yeah, I would add to what that point and what Jeff mentioned earlier is that this notion of business continuity is very important with the cloud. If you think about the amount of infrastructure that the cloud providers have put in, the investments they've made, and we're talking billions of dollars, that as opposed to investments that an organization like AIM would make to kind of secure and ensure that their business continuity was in place. It's a very different conversation. And I think with a disaster recovery and a business continuity discussion with cloud, it really changes the conversation. It really kind of then focuses more on, okay, let's talk about the business processes around that versus worrying about whether or not our hardware is safe or hardware is functional if something were to occur. So I think it changes the conversation and really makes, really kind of highlights the power of the cloud as well as capabilities of the organization to refocus their assets or refocus their energy on that business process.
Yeah, and the proof was the performance. So we've got 3 years now under our belt, and it's performed. So that's why every day, my concern is less and less. The senior team at AIM, concern is less and less, and it's just more about, this is the technology today, and this is the technology that we should be utilizing, not yesterday's technology, today's technology.
Funny thing too is when you think about cloud, and cloud's one of those words that you started to hear 5 years ago, 6 years ago, moving to the cloud. But services have been in the cloud for the past 20 years. If you drill down, you have the AOLs of the world that were providing email and access to information. You have your Hotmails of the world. Salesforce, we talked a little about Salesforce. Salesforce has been around for 20 years. They're not new to the game. So these services that are being offered outside of your walls, right, have been around for 20 years. They are, they're well vetted. They keep developing, they keep improving. So I think we saw the reduce the footprint. We've increased security on many levels, multi-factor authentication, identity management, and part 3 of the series, we'll talk a little bit more about security as well. We've achieved that predictable cost. We know when we onboard a new employee that it's going to cost, $240 a year for services for that employee. So that is great. I'm even going to advance to our next piece up against the kind of Q&A section. So right here, I think this is actually a great screen. AIM, your transformation, you can approach it in 2 different ways, and I have an analogy. The first time I traveled abroad, I went with friends, and we looked around, and we had an okay time. The second time I went with a tour guide, and I came back with a totally different experience. When you look at your digital transformation, you can try this yourself and muddle through it. And keep in mind, generally, when you're trying to get employees on board, you want to make sure you do it right. Or you can hire an IT partner to actually navigate those waters to help you. Someone's been there, done that. So here, some of your outcomes was you hired a partner. You looked at both AIM looked at Office 365 for some of the services. They realized that Office 365 itself didn't provide all the services. Went to a third-party vendor for your core, really, line of business application. Leveraged Azure Cloud for other services. Ultimately, at the end of the day, you had one nice kind of synergy among all the providers, and then started leveraging on security, right, mobility and security. So, I think you met all your objectives there, right, and which is fantastic. So some of the key takeaways here, know your digital transformation, and I can't stress that enough. AIM had a roadmap. They were very clear on what they wanted to do. They set guides and milestones to make sure they achieved it. Figure out what your outcomes are, why you want to get it, why you're doing this. Manage costs and gains, and also continuous improvement, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So, as we've said, as Chandler has mentioned, over Microsoft is just investing so much in here. This is a very interesting quote. Digital transformation is a journey and not, a destination, right?
Absolutely.
And why don't I actually take a minute and kind of explain that?
Yeah.
What that is.
Well, what that means is that, we talk about kind of a 2-stage conversation. AIM has obviously gone through the first stage, which is to modernize their infrastructure and get them into the quote-unquote cloud. But then once you're there, that's really where the more interesting things start to happen, because then you can start taking advantage of those innovations. You can start taking advantage of the platform that is, being evolved, being more built out. More services are being added, more capabilities. And like what Cindy mentioned, one day you just see an icon appear on a screen to say, hey, we have this new Microsoft Flow capability. And so Microsoft is going to continue to evolve their service. Obviously, they're going to focus on the fundamentals of security and privacy and scalability, but at the same time, they're going to be looking to expand. And we've seen this demonstrated time and time again over the last 2 years. Microsoft is not resting their heels. They are constantly evolving their platforms, both on the Office 365 side as well as the Microsoft Azure side of things. So really, it's a journey. You're going to continue to look for ways to take advantage of cloud capabilities, whether it be to reduce costs or to provide more efficiencies, or in some cases, build more revenue. So those are all things that the cloud provides. And so it's not just a matter of saying, okay, we're on the cloud, we're done. There's really no done state here, because the platforms are going to continue to get more powerful, and they're going to provide these capabilities to organizations of all sizes. It used to be that some of these capabilities were only available to rather large enterprises. Today, the cloud is really it levels the playing field. Everybody can take advantage of these capabilities, and that's why we say it's a journey, not a destination.
That is great. So a little bit about iCorps as we come up to the end of the hour. We'll do some Q&A. We've been founded in 1994, 20 plus years. iCorps is a managed service IT outsourcing company that focuses on cloud. As an organization, we have a 90% plus client retention rate. We're located here and headquartered here in Boston, the Strass Center. We are in the Northeast, New York, Philadelphia, Michigan, and the Carolinas. One of the things that we've been recognized by Microsoft as Partner of the Year in the Northeast, Cloud Partner of the Year in the Northeast. We're part of the CRN MSP 100 Technology Elite year over year, and we have been with the Boston Business Journal top IT consulting firm in Massachusetts. So as we come up to this at the end, we'll have some questions. We've put together some resources here. Here's a small URL, so it's not huge. http://bit.ly. So something you may not actually see all the time. It's not a .com and not .net. It's .ly with digital transformation, DGT 2017, where you can find additional information. So, Chris, I think we have about 8 minutes for some Q&As.
Absolutely.
And
sure,
so
Jeff,
do we have, yep.
So thanks very much. First question, I guess, is for Cindy, and that is, what practical guidance or advice would you give to people who are considering their own digital transformation?
I would say know your objectives, know your goal, and be transparent, work with the staff, get staff buy-in, and staff training is sort of very important. So I think I said this on the outset. That was one of, we although we did that, we could have done more of that. I would say that's it. That would be the advice. Having a partner, certainly the partner helps. It holds our hand, helps us make some of these decisions. Helps us do some of the training. But, right in the outset, know what your objective and your goal is.
Was there anything about the process that surprised you or that you weren't expecting, either in a positive or negative light?
Well, I think the surprise was that it actually worked. You get yourself into these things, and there's always real hope, and you do your work, you do your research, you do your homework, you do your planning, and at the end of the day, we're 3 years in, and we did it on a step-by-step basis. We didn't start with everything on day one. We focused on Office 365, then we focused on CRM Dynamics, then we focused on Great Plains. That it in fact worked, and I think generally the staff is pleased. They use it. They're not sort of questioning its ability anymore. Everybody is getting involved with the new technologies, new things that come along, and I would call that sort of a very positive outcome.
Jeff and Chandler, questions for you. So AIM is a service kind of business. Does the scenario change a whole lot if you're dealing with another kind of business, a manufacturing company, a distribution company, anything like that, or is it pretty much the same script?
Well, I think it's yes and no. So yes, in terms of there are some fundamentals that every organization needs to think about when looking at a digital transformation. Those fundamentals are typically around the security and privacy side, typically around disaster recovery, business continuity, things that we covered on earlier. I think when you get into the verticals and you begin kind of understanding the business side, then yes, that there is some divergence that can occur there. And it's a matter of understanding, industry norms or industry standards that may have an influence or an impact on the way the cloud is embraced and the way the digital transformation needs to occur. Regulatory is an example of, there may be some considerations for the data that needs to be stored in the cloud versus maybe data that for whatever reason needs to stay on-prem. So there are some considerations that need to be looked at. Jeff, I don't know if you had anything to add to that.
No, I think that's right. Every client and every scenario is different regarding, not only industry. I mean, it can be different from the same industry from, one company to another. And again, it is from a migration point of view, they're pretty standardized for the most part, but there are the considerations, the largest one being regulatory compliance, where your data sits, encryption at rest, security. So those are things that are going to be unique to each engagement. There is an overarching universal kind of thought, but again, from the transformation process, the mechanics is relatively straightforward. It is all of the other things that you have to look at. And that is why I think one of the things, and this actually is a great question as I have the slide up here, one of the things is really look at a partner. And Microsoft is very, very aware that every engagement, every client, every industry is different. So they offer funding for folks to actually have a partner come in, look at, what their cloud readiness is, what their transformation would look like. So you have a roadmap. So for example, let's say you were to move a bank, right? Or actually, let's say a manufacturing firm. You're moving a manufacturing firm and, they have requirements that only U.S. citizens can have access to data. Well, right off the bat, that tells me that one, that the storage of the data has to be in the U.S. and it has to be in a very specific silo. So without knowing that, you can inadvertently migrate yourself to a situation where you fall out of regulatory compliance.
Right.
So that's why, having a partner really helps a whole lot.
I think understanding that roadmap is critical because once you have that roadmap laid out and you understand what the implications are across the business areas, then the mechanics, as you say, Jeff, are fairly straightforward. But really, that upfront planning is very important.
Great. Sorry, I know we're pressing a minute, so let's do a lightning round here. Question from one of our participants is: would you say we're moving away from domain controllers like Windows Server and moving toward complete cloud management of the clients?
So I would say yes. Microsoft, specifically the Microsoft platform, but not just Microsoft. What is domain controllers on site are really our legacy. Yeah, we had a whole conversation about this earlier. But ultimately, that model is going away. With the introduction of Windows 10 Workstation, Pro and Better, Pro and Enterprise, with the introduction of Windows Server 2016, authentication and management all comes from the cloud. That helps you be a mobile, dynamic workforce that is not tied to one given location. If you're a business today starting up, there is absolutely no reason that you would have on-prem equipment, including a domain controller. If you're a business today that wants to transform over the next 12, 16, 18 months, you're going to start deploying these technologies that drive you away from the on-prem domain control. So that is a great question.
Got it. And then our last question this afternoon is, it appears that AIM transformed to the cloud in steps. What was the timing? What did the timing look like for each of the steps?
Okay, so we made the decision in 2014, and early 2014. We actually connected with Microsoft first, who connected us with iCorps. And so the first thing we did, we had them do an audit of our entire system, so we talked a lot about that. Then so in 2014, we made the decision. We actually went live with Office 365 June of 2014. So it was a pretty quick turnaround for Office 365. Then we had to make the decision around CRM and the membership database system built on CRM. There were a couple of vendors out there. That took us about a year to determine which vendor we wanted to do, and then really another year. We just went live with them early 2017. So, that was a big decision to make, and it took us a while to make that decision. But in the meantime, while we were making the CRM data, membership database system, we were learning more and more about Office 365 and just building out. And somewhere in the middle there, we made before Dynamics, we made the Great Plains decision, and that was really quick. I mean, that happened very quickly.
And if I can add something, it's not necessarily about the speed in which you get there. It's kind of the thoroughness. It's the planning. It's, the transition has to be transparent. It has to be smooth. From a service provider's perspective, we look at every engagement as one opportunity to really get people's buy-in. And if you don't take the time and plan it out appropriately, realize where some of the blockers are going to be, and if you just jump into it and move forward and say, I want to take my organization from point A to point Z in 6 months, you're more than likely going to fail. Taking those steps are going to really increase your success. There are easy wins. Office 365 collaboration is a relatively straightforward, easy win, where, for example, AIM's membership system really took time and due diligence and understanding what the impact is. That's a little bit more. Also, when you're looking at transitioning, we look at things in the, not a lift and shift taking from point A to point B, but how can we take the services that we're doing today and modernize them as well? You don't want to take, there's an old adage, garbage in, garbage out. You don't want to take something that may be working kind of okay and just moving it forward. This is a great opportunity to look at what you're doing today, what your applications are doing today, and how to modernize those as well. So, for example, if you have a SQL server, you may not need that SQL server in the cloud. You just may need SQL services. And this is where Chandler and his team comes in and analyzes what you're doing and a better way of doing it.
You're spot on, Jeff. I mean, it's all about looking at improving efficiencies, reducing cost, higher agility, all those things that we talked about earlier in the presentation, focusing on, not just moving things, but also modernizing them and providing more value to the broader organization.
And if I know we're running over time, Chris, but if I could add, time was less important than success. And we saw this change as being really a long-term change for AIM. It was not a temporary change. It was not a quick fix. That we saw that this is where technology is going. And it was right for us and, right for an organization our size. We are hoping to sort of be growing in a deliberate way, but it was about getting it right and knowing that this was a long-term solution. So in the scheme of things, AIM is 102 years old, and we're going to be, 200 someday. So in the whole scheme of things, 3 or 4 years was not a long time.
That is great.
Absolutely. Well, Jeff, Chandler, Cindy, thank you very much for sharing this information with us, and thank you for joining us as well. If you haven't yet signed up for the second part of the digital transformation series, which is going to take place a week from today on September 27th, again at noon, please go to our website. Please go to our calendar. It doesn't cost anything. AIM's doing it as a service, so hope you enjoyed it. And once again, we will send a PDF version of the presentation slides out to you. Thank you and have a great day. Goodbye.